Sodonia.
He represented the Stowe area. Yes, yeah, thank you. So yeah, if you want to introduce yourselves, we can go ahead and get started.
Absolutely, yes. So for the record, Miranda Gray, I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Economic Services Division, and I really appreciate you having us in today. And with me is our Food and Nutrition Team Director. So Three Squares are federally known as SNAP, Leslie Wisdom. And we put together a slide deck that hopefully you have and I will share. And we really appreciate this opportunity to be able to, probably you know a lot about it, but just to kind of frame what this program is. And then we did get some questions, which we wove into the presentation as well. And we will be mindful of it as a Friday afternoon. Absolutely. Go ahead and introduce yourself and I will get this ready to go.
Hi, Leslie Wisdom. Nice to meet all of you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And who else did you bring along? The member of the?
I'm Monica Medeiros. I am the Director of Communications on Legislative Affairs for Economic Services with DCF.
Okay, good. Nice to meet you. And welcome, Lenore, as well.
Yes, I'm reviewing mine.
Yeah, here. I think we're just suggesting some lighting here.
Oh, sure.
Maybe.
Now I'll be able to see.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we're going to give an overview of the Three Squares Vermont program, high level eligibility, how that's determined. We have some data and facts and some historical information, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We also run a number of related food and nutrition programs that we thought you might be interested in as well. So Three Squares Vermont is what we call the federal SNAP program, that's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It is a federal program. The benefits are 100% federally funded, and then states and the federal government share 50-50 in the cost to administer the program. It is governed by federal laws and rules. Unfortunately, I can't see when I'm reading, so I'm going to be going back and forth. So our website, if you're ever interested in, we have a lot of caseload and other data. It's updated monthly with current figures. We also have a historical report that goes back to 1983. If you're interested in seeing what caseloads were like then and how much in benefits we were issuing every month back then or annually back then. Currently, we have 39,288 households in the program. That is 65,525 individuals, which is just over 10% of Vermont's population is currently participating. And to break that number down a little bit, there's 19,714 children, and then there's 17,486 adults 60 years or older, and 19,510 individuals living with a disability. Those last two numbers, the adults and the disability, are not deduplicated, so a person could be in both of those categories. And Vermont issues almost $13 million every month in these food benefits to Vermonters that goes back into the food economy. So eligibility for Three Squares Vermont gets really complicated, but we won't get into the complications unless you have questions about that. But the general rule is that households are eligible if they have a gross income of 185% of the federal poverty level, and then a net income of 100% of the federal poverty level. And to put that into like real terms, a household of one, the 185% is about $2,322 in income per month. A family of four, it's $4,810 per month. The benefit amounts for Three Squares Vermont are set by the federal government as well. And it's based on what's known as the Thrifty Food Plan. And this is very thrifty. It's what the federal government has calculated a household will spend if they're spending judiciously and economically on their monthly food budget. So the federal government has said if you buy nutrient-dense food on a budget, a household of one, their monthly food budget would be $292. A household of four, that's $975. I've actually tried to keep my spending. I have 2 children and it's really, really difficult to spend within those modest amounts. And this thrifty food plan, you feel free to scroll. It factors into how we calculate the benefits. So that's also very complicated, but the big idea is the federal government expects households to spend 30% of their net income on their monthly food budget. So the federal SNAP program is called a supplemental nutrition program. And so the underlying premise is that this is a supplement to the food budget. So our eligibility staff in the district offices, they determine the net income of a household by taking their gross income, and there are many allowable deductions, including like shelter expenses, medical expenses, daycare, just to name a few, and they come to that net income amount. They multiply that times 30%. And let's just say if you go back to the thrifty food plan, a household of 2, if that 30% net income turned out to be $200, their benefit would be $536 minus $200, so they would get a $300 SNAP benefit because they're expected to spend that first $200 of their own money.
So a family of 4, it had $57,000 roughly. If their net was 30%, 900. That doesn't leave a lot, does it?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, and those are set by the federal government. So that's, they were, I think it was October of 2024, the thrifty food plan was adjusted for inflation. I think some argued it didn't quite get to where it needs to be, but it was much lower prior to 2024. Okay. So when we approve a household for benefits, we generally, for the most part, load them onto electronic benefit transfer cards. We call them EBT cards. This is a picture of what a card looks like. It's got the head of household's name on it. And then they use that to purchase their groceries, just like you would a debit card or a credit card at convenience stores, grocery stores, farmers markets, delis, and participating farm stands. A lot of
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a cap on how much you can get a month? I'm thinking, a homeless family of 4 with no income, for example,
yeah,
could only get so much.
they would only go, if you go, yeah, they would only get the maximum 975. So if your net income is 0, or if your gross income is 0 and your net income is 0, you would get, this is the most that any household could get,
Okay.
household size.
And would there be other requirements then too, as far as like if you're homeless, are there residential things or do other
There are no other
bills
requirements.
come into it at all?
Well, that's why we get into the net income calculation. But if the net income turns out to be 0, then that's, yeah, the 975 would be the most. Thanks, Miranda. The items that are eligible for purchase with SNAP benefits include, it's your basic grocery items that you would use to prepare a meal. So it's fruits and vegetables, meat, dairy, cereal, grain, shelf-stable items like canned goods or frozen food. I think it's kind of fun that you can buy seeds and plants that produce food for your household. So that's especially important during the farmers market season. And then again, households can shop. Retailers are approved by the federal government to be an EBT retailer. I think most grocery stores and a lot of convenience stores and delis have that approval. And we do work, we'll talk in a minute about farm stands, but we work with many farm stands and farmers markets as well.
Just under the shelf stable food items, I mean, I'm assuming it appears to me that, or my understanding is that basically anything that's food is covered. So candy, potato chips, like there's no criteria of healthy food versus not healthy food. It's anything more or less that's edible, except for like prepared hot foods or something. I know there's exceptions to that, right? There aren't really exceptions even to super junky food that really doesn't have nutritious value.
There are not, though there are a lot of conversations about that.
No soda.
I think you can.
No, soda's taxable.
Oh, if soda's taxable, then, well,
I'm pretty sure you can get soda.
I think you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I should change that slide.
Because
Yeah.
soda is taxable
You're right about that. You're right. I should,
and you shouldn't be buying soda. Shouldn't.
yeah.
I shouldn't buy soda.
Right, right. That's what I tell my kids as well. There are lots of things that you're not able to purchase. The big ones, alcohol or tobacco, vitamins and supplements, live animals. Right. The hot and prepared foods, which you just mentioned, the biggest example people talk about is like that really convenient rotisserie chicken at the grocery store on a busy weeknight is super convenient, but that's not eligible for purchase with SNAP.
If it's cold, is it eligible? Because they do move them into the cooler after they've reached a certain point.
I've never seen that.
Me either.
Well, maybe that's just my effort. I don't.
But it's still prepared.
But it's still prepared, yeah.
Yeah,
Still prepared, yeah.
I think it's the food that you're able to eat immediately. That's not that you're
Okay.
gonna go to your car and eat it.
Got it.
Yeah, that's not eligible. And then those kind of non-food items that a lot of us buy at the grocery store, like cleaning supplies and paper products, those are not eligible either.
Does Representative Ryan?
Does the alcohol have to be, like kombucha? Can you buy that? Or is, like if it's low levels of alcohol?
You could buy kombucha. Yeah. You don't need an ID for that.
What? Very good.
You don't need an ID for it, yeah.
Okay, right.
We have a couple of projects and initiatives that work together to help provide greater access to our program. The first is a demonstration project called 3 Squares Vermont in a Snap. We call it 3 Snap because that's kind of a mouthful. But we launched this project during the pandemic in October of 2020 with the goal of increasing participation in our program of older Vermonters and those living with disabilities. So it's more accessible because it is a much shorter and easier application to apply. Just to give you the context of that, our 3 Squares Vermont application is 15 pages right now with 45 questions. Those are mandated by the federal government. We do have approval through this project, though, to have this shorter application with just 4 pages and 15 questions. And then households who apply for 3 SNAP, they're certified for benefits for a longer period. So it's 3 years instead of the traditional 1 year. So we don't have to check in with them only every 3 years unless they have questions for us. And then another great benefit is these households have a dedicated caseworker with access to their direct state issued cell phone number. So they can form that relationship with the caseworker. They don't have to wait on hold if they're calling up our call center. And that's currently, that population is almost half of our 3 Squares Vermont population. It's the same benefit, it's just an easier way to get in the door. And this works nicely with the next option that we've elected in Vermont. It's called our cash out option. We're one of only 5 states that is able to issue SNAP benefits like cash to households that meet the criteria. And it's loaded as cash onto the EBT card, for example, where you could take it to an ATM, withdraw it as cash, and then spend it at the store however you chose, or we can directly deposit it into someone's checking or savings account. So it reduces stigma of participation in the program. It's a really similar population to the 3 SNAP. The age is just slightly different, and that's because of federal rule. So it's everyone in the household is 65 or older or living with a disability. Yeah, and again, it's about half of our population. So those two work together to get someone in the door and then also reduce stigma by providing the benefit as cash.
What's the advantage to getting cash as opposed to just using the card if you're going to be buying the food anyway? I don't really understand why that's an advantage.
I think some people don't want to be seen with the EBT card. It does have that beautiful Vermont scene. I think people don't want to be seen using that card at participating stores.
Representative
Is on that same question, is there a concern that the cash should be used for other things besides food? I noticed it said eligible recipients. I don't know if one might have an addiction problem, for instance. I don't know if that's a concern.
That's not something that we've heard about. I think generally with the, this is targeted towards our older or more elderly Vermonters or those with disabilities. So it's really to increase access. I haven't heard of anyone misusing the cash. I can see where your question's coming from, though. It's a valid question.
Everyone is 60, I'm just looking at eligibility and, everyone is 65 or older and or receives, okay, that's fine. Okay. Thank you.
There are some work requirement rules with SNAP. There's two types of work requirements. This is also a complicated topic. But just to give you a high level overview, the general work requirement isn't really a work requirement. That's what it's called at the federal level. So that's what we call it. It is for people ages 16 to 59. And it's a requirement, if you don't have an exemption from this requirement, to accept a suitable job offer if it's given to you. And if you already have a job, to not quit unless you have a good reason. Most folks in this category of needing to meet this requirement are exempt. We have 4,000, almost 4,700 people who are already working 30 or more hours per week. So that's actually an exemption from the requirement because you don't have to accept a job offer. They do have to maintain that job and not quit, but we look at it as an exemption. Some of the other larger are for medical reasons, and that's a medical provider has determined that someone can't work. We have almost 12,000 folks in that category. And then the age under 16 or under 18, sorry, or attending school is about 20,000 people. Other exemptions include caring for a child in your home under 6 years old. That's about 1,200 people. Or caring for an adult or someone else that needs help, that's 243 people. If you're on unemployment, you have your own set of rules around work, so we don't also layer on top of that. So you're exempt from this requirement. There's 444 people participating in the Reach Up program, because again, it has its own sets of rules and requirements. It's about 3,400 people. And then if you are actively participating in drug or alcohol treatment, you're allowed to focus on that treatment and not comply with this.
What would be Reach Up?
Yeah, that is the state's temporary aid to needy families program. And so it comes with case management and a monthly benefit to help pay with your housing cost and other costs that you might have, some of those incidentals that you're not allowed to purchase with your 3 Squares card. You have to have children in the household. And so that can either be for a caretaker. Say I was an aunt who took in my nephews. I might be eligible for this if I needed help supporting taking in 2 children into my home, or it is for families, so if I have a family and have it's a very low income, and I don't know the benefits amounts off the top of my head, but it is pretty, I'm looking at Monica because she used to work in that program. If you have an example of like what the family of, a household of, or we can, no, not off the top of your head. If you're curious, like of what that monthly benefit is, then we can get that as well, but we administer that out of economic services.
So it's helping someone that's helping another family.
Or it could be that we're helping a family, say, you have, you lost your job, you weren't eligible for unemployment, or you're a young parent, who hadn't gotten into the job market. One of the components here of having case management is to help people figure out what barriers do they have. Might it be like they just needed help with a resume and they needed some help purchasing work clothes? We could do that. Or it could be someone, that has, other significant barriers, and maybe their journey is going to take a little bit because they're not going to be able to go to work right away.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can foster parents apply for SNAP? Or is the stipend you get when your foster parent says expected to cover food?
Like, I would want to phone a friend. We can,
Yeah, we can confirm
we'll come
that.
back to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Just one question, are these federal requirements or?
Yes. Yes, everything we're talking about today is a federal requirement.
Thanks.
And then there is another work requirement that actually is a work requirement, and that's for a smaller subset. If you think about a Venn diagram, the first work requirement is this larger group of people. This is a smaller cohort within that, that diagram. It's about 4,700 people right now that are subject to this requirement. And it's those between the ages of 18 and 54 who I'm going to say the federal government, quote, considers able to work. So they don't have an exemption from that other work requirement we just talked about, the general work requirement. These folks are required to work or participate in a job training program 80 hours per month. There's also a volunteer option, and that's a calculation that we do in our offices. It depends on your benefit amount. So it's usually less than 80 hours per month. There are 94 people right now who are currently meeting this requirement through working 80 hours per month. And then most people are exempt from this work requirement through these different federal options. 2,477 have children in their household, which makes them exempt from this requirement to work 80 hours a week. 95 folks are pregnant, experiencing homelessness, being a veteran, and being a former foster child are new exemptions passed by the Federal Fiscal Responsibility Act. So we, for example, the homelessness is 1,564. People who are experiencing homelessness may already have a different exemption, but if they don't, then this is an exemption that's available to them. And then the veteran status, it's any discharge, so it's honorable or dishonorable, would allow you to have that exemption. There's one more. We are, with the help of our friends at Hunger Free Vermont, we're repackaging this exemption. We're now calling it a personal obstacle or barrier. We used to call it a physical or mental fitness for work. That's the federal term, but we're trying to make this exemption more understandable and relatable for people, so they understand that they could let us know they have this exemption. Because we have 425 people right now receiving 3 Squares Vermont who are not exempt and are not meeting the requirement. And if you have 3 what we call free months in a 36-month period to not meet the requirement, if this is one that you have, you lose your 3 Squares Vermont benefits after 3 months. So the 425 people are those who are at risk of losing benefits. And we're trying to ensure that they either can meet the requirement or that they can let us know about an exemption that they have so they don't lose their food benefits.
I'm just wondering, how recently did that former foster child category come in? Because I used to be a case manager and I hadn't heard of that like a year and a half ago.
The Fiscal Responsibility Act was 2024.
It may not have been
Yes.
just then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fairly new. Yeah. And also in working with Hunger Free Vermont, we have a new website that's up this week that explains all of the complicated work rules. It explains how to obtain an exemption for the personal obstacle or barrier, if that's one that applies to you. And it's got a link to what we're calling a work requirement screener. So our staff have actually played with it this week and found it really helpful. Our participants in 3 Squares can use it to say, it asks you questions, it leads you through the exemptions, it's got logic behind it. So if you answer that you don't live with children, it won't go into more child questions, but like your age, do you have a disability? Are you already working? Are you a veteran? And after you go through the logic, it spits out like, oh, you're subject to the work requirement, or we think you're not subject to any requirements. Make sure you contact ESD to let them know about your exemptions. So it's been a really helpful, I think it will be a really helpful tool for our customers as well as our staff.
In terms of that contact, to try and get more information, a couple of years ago, I would do that with clients and we would be on hold for like 3 hours. I'm wondering, where's the status of trying to actually get through if you're trying to make a phone call to reach somebody to update a status?
Yep. So this is something that I'm happy to say, I don't believe we have days,
Yeah.
right, where we have, in times of the month where more people call us than others, but our call wait times, we also moved, not this past summer, but the summer before, we administered the general assistance motel program.
Yep.
That as well, and that was creating problems across our phone lines, and so that has a separate phone line as well. So we do try to address that right now. We're also trying to understand, work with the Vermont Public Certified Managers Program. We had them take an outside look, do interviews to see like how might we be able to assist Vermonters in a different way? Because sometimes people wait on the phone to just say like, did you get my application? Right. And so we are trying to understand how can we direct people in the right way and then process things as quickly as they can so people aren't waiting on hold.
Yeah.
We're going to keep working at it because it's not perfect for sure.
I think some had some questions around what are our performance measures? How do we measure our success? And I want to share with you, because this is a federal program, we are really heavily regulated and monitored by our federal agency, United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Service. So one of their biggest priorities historically has been integrity of the program and payment accuracy. So we are measured every federal fiscal year on how we're doing. And I realize I neglected to provide some more detail in this table, but this is the measurement of our payment error rate. So it measures errors either for overpayments, which are not good. We are stewards of public funds. We should make sure we don't overpay people. It also is not good for our customers because they sometimes have to pay that money back if we've made a mistake. And underpayments, also not good because it means we haven't given someone their full benefit amount that they're eligible for. So in looking at payment error rates, Vermont is actually doing quite well compared to the rest of the country. In federal fiscal 24 that just wrapped up, at least in terms of payment accuracy, these aren't final numbers, but our payment error rate is 5.17%. And the two prior federal fiscal years, it was also quite low. And we were ranked third best in the country in terms of our payment error rate. We want that number to be as small as possible. So the smallest number is what we're going for. There were 2 years during the pandemic where we weren't measured on payment accuracy. We had some pandemic relief options happening where we actually paid everybody their maximum benefit. So that Thrifty Food Plan chart, we still calculated their benefit. So that household of 2 that got $336, we calculated that, but then we gave them the $536. So we gave them like a supplemental payment to get them up to the maximum to help them through the pandemic. So we weren't measured in those 2 federal fiscal years, but before the pandemic, we were 4th. I can say Idaho and South Dakota keep beating us. So they're the 1 and 2, and we're number 3.
Oh,
What do you attribute Vermont's or those other 2 states' good performance to?
Sorry, will you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
What are we doing that is
Oh.
making us be third in that country?
Well, we have a great deputy commissioner. I'll say that.
Thank you.
No, not to be cheeky, but in Vermont, we also take payment accuracy very seriously. We are working with our district staff who determine eligibility closely. As the part of the SNAP program administration, we're required to go out and basically audit districts and look at cases and listen to phone calls every year. We do that. We provide feedback. We have an entire operations team that supports the district offices that does a wonderful job of working closely with the program, folks who know the rules, and ensuring that we're carrying out the rules of this federal program to its exact standards.
I just add that we also have a training unit because we have so many rules, both state and federal, that govern the various programs that we administer. They are also always looking at like, how do we make this make more sense for people? Because it isn't always like, oh, it's the same across all the programs we administer, because it isn't the case. So it is like, all right, what do we start with? Which program governs others, and what are those nuances? So I think that also has been really helpful.
And then another really important, yes, thank you. Kind of measurement from the federal side is timeliness of our decisions. And that's really important because when an applicant household comes to us, that means they're in need. And so we want to process applications, approve them if we can, and issue benefits as quickly as possible. We have 30 days to do that for what we call our regular applications. For our even more vulnerable households with very little to no income or resources, we have 7 days to do that. So we're measured on how quickly we can process. Right now, our timeliness rate is 94.55%. we're number 16 in the country. This is, just to be transparent with you, it's an area we're seeking to improve. We had 2 quarters where we fell just under 90% in our timeliness. Recently, so we're in corrective action to get that number up to be consistently 95. And our most recent data, we're getting really close. We'll have another report coming out end of February. But it's one of our priority initiatives right now is to improve the timeliness.
Representative Nelson.
Do you work with these families? My wife's the world's most famous coupon clipper or signing up for all the with Shaw's. There can be great deals.
Mhm.
Do you work with these families in managing their SNAP benefits so that they can take advantage of ribeye steak at $5 a pound? I mean, it does happen, $5.99 a pound. And other chicken and other food stuff. I always look at meat, so.
Yeah.
Do you work with these families to coach them on how to make their dollars stretch further?
That is something we're going to talk about in just a minute. It's called SNAP Education. But it sounds like we might need to also hire your wife to come in and do some classes for us. In addition, just to also share, we're audited every year. Sometimes it's fine. Multiple times a year by the federal government on all aspects of federal policy and eligibility. So they're constantly coming in to see if we are following all the different federal rules, quality control. And so that's another way to we gauge our performance. Thanks, Miranda. And then, this is a great segue. So our team and economic services, we do more than just issue 3 Squares Vermont. We do a lot of kind of tangential and related programs as well, like nutrition education. This is a 100% federally funded program, and the goal is to help people live active, healthy lives. So physical activity, and then also shopping for and making your 3 Squares Vermont dollars and your budget stretch, how to utilize seasonal fruits and vegetables. We're really big into fruits and vegetables on this team, and how to stay physically active. So we work with a number of community partners, including the Department of Health, Vermont Food Bank. Come Alive Outside is a Rutland project that's got like a passport for kids to stay physically active during the summer and winter months, and they get prizes and also incentives for fresh fruits and vegetables. Just a couple of others. The Abenaki Tribal Nation is a new partner this year, which has been really exciting, and People's Farm Stand. We also are federally required to run an employment and training program. So our program is voluntary for anyone who is seeking employment or seeking to have a better job or education to further their employment opportunities. We run this program in partnership with partners. As part of this program, we have case management, and then we have a lot of services around looking for a job, keeping a job when you get one, also supporting someone through their education. One of the incentives to participating in this program is that we provide reimbursements for expenses that are related to their job search or their education. For example, we can buy someone clothes for a job interview, or if they need tools and special boots for a job, or they need books or other supports for education, we actually can help pay for those, in addition to their 3 Squares Vermont benefits. Average age in ICANN, we call it ICANN. I forgot to say that, our Individual Career Advancement Network. The average participant age right now is 44. And our average reimbursement amount for those expenses is $208. We talked earlier about the fact that 10% of Vermont's population participates in 3 Squares Vermont. That's actually just less than half of those who are income eligible to participate in the program. So really almost 20% of Vermont's population is income eligible. So we work, it's called our outreach program. We work with community partners also just to educate folks about the program, help them apply. Our community partners can actually sit with them and fill out the application. wait on hold with them for their interview, support them through the process. And the goal is to just improve access to the program. Farm to Family, it's one of our more fun programs. It's a seasonal program to help income eligible households purchase fresh fruits and vegetables during the farmers market season. Eligible households get coupon books that they can use at the market. It's a $30 coupon book. Our senior households get $48. And we just wrapped up the 2024 numbers. We had 43 farmers markets and 20 farm stands participating. And then our customers redeemed just over $95,000 in their coupons at these locations.
Thank you. I guess this is a little bit more to the previous slide, but do you get funding based on folks who are potentially eligible or for folks who are only enrolled and participating in the programs? If it was money coming federally, so are we potentially as Vermont missing out on additional funding that could be coming down?
No, we don't get, we are funded based on, well, you want to speak to that? Just, I mean, there's not an incentive necessarily. The benefits are 100% federal. The program administration is based on the costs of our staff.
Right. And I think it is, if we had more people who are part of the program, then we would get more money.
Right.
But we can't get that money without having the participants, if that makes sense.
It's an entitlement. So if you're eligible, you get the benefit. We also now run the summer EBT program. It's a new federal program in 2024. It provides a grocery benefit to households with school-aged children who aren't able to access meals during the summer months. So it works just like SNAP. It's not SNAP. It has a whole set of different laws and rules associated with it. But it's a grocery benefit of $120 per child. The family, it's loaded onto the same EBT card, and families can use that to purchase groceries for the summer months while their kids are at home. Eating through House at Home is in my experience, what happens during the summer months. What's great about this program is that most households don't have to do anything to get the benefit. We identify eligible households because they're already receiving one of our many Economic Services Division program benefits or Medicaid, or they're in the foster care system. I mean, so we have data on these households and we send them the benefit. For those who are income eligible and want to apply and we haven't already identified, we have an application online. They can also call us. We have a dedicated call center that my team runs just for summer EBT purposes. We can send them the application or help them apply. We just wrapped up 2024 and we distributed about $4.7 million in this summer benefit to about 39,000 children. And we're gearing up right now for 2025.
I just want to acknowledge before John's question that you, Miranda anyway, came in a year ago. It was not quite a year ago. It was later in the session last year, and testified on the summer EBT program, the challenges we were having getting it started. And I think at the time, it didn't look like we were going to have it in place for summer of 2024. And then after the session, and we all left Montpelier at some point in the summer, we heard just through our own channels that had, in fact, not been the case, and that we were able to put the program together. So appreciate that.
And I'm sorry for not looping back to say plans had changed, and it truly was, I have to say, it was a significant effort on the part of the Agency of Education, the Agency of Digital Services, and then our food and nutrition team to truly pull this off. And we were one of, I don't know if a handful is the right number of states that were able to do this, but it was significant for us to be able to do this. And so we were pleased to be able to do this for the children.
The system's in place, so now going forward, it's not going to be a heavy lift every year, but
we are still working through some of our IT, right? We were able to get everything up outwardly facing beautiful. Inwardly, there are still some manual processes. So we have a little bit of work to go there. So it is less burdensome for my team, but we're still working through that and still have that partnership with the two agencies.
Representative O'Brien.
So there are no restrictions between the summer EBT and the Universal School Meal Summer Program? Like you're eligible for both, right? And you can get both.
And the summertime benefit of 120 per child per month? Or is that for the whole summer?
For the whole summer.
For the whole summer, okay.
Again, a modest budget. Yep.
Yes, for 50, 60 days,
Mhm.
$2 a day.
Oh, that's it.
I guess we're now, if there are any other questions.
Yeah.
How are a lot of your families eligible? Of course, we have the universal school meals, which we champion here. Are a lot of your families also receiving the backpack lunches sent home for weekends and whatnot by the schools?
Yes, there's no restriction that, we call it a suite of options, especially for the summer months. We encourage households to use your summer EBT option, for example, pick up those, you can go to the congruent meal sites or have those meals to go in the rural areas. We really just want to like bolster all the potential ways to make sure children are fed and combine them.
How nervous are we over current national policies or? Let me first off say I'm very excited hearing from people in the community that haven't been immersed and educated on why these programs are so vital. I do like the work requirement or working towards work requirement, because even if you don't work, it's not enough money to live. So I will be reporting that back home to my constituents of, look, there is these requirements. This is a hand up. This is to help somebody get up and get going. But how concerned are we with the federal going on right now? I mean, sounds like you're Doge proof, but.
We're monitoring really closely all of the hearsay. I guess I would say, we have the continuing resolution that ends March 15th. I keep saying the 14th.
That's March.
Right. So there is a lot in this space that we are watching. We don't want to create alarm, but I would say like what you can know is we're planning. Like, okay, what would happen? And then, would certainly be elevating that everywhere that we need to if something were to change. But yeah, it could be significant or it could not be. And I hope for the not be, but we're definitely preparing and paying attention.
I just wondered if you did any calculation on, say, there's a family of 4, they're getting that $9.75 or something close to that with universal school meals. Have you done a calculation on, in sort of real dollars, how much that might be added to that $9.75? Because just they're getting, I mean, they would probably get it perhaps without universal school meals right on needs based too, but just as these different programs like WIC or your summer program or universal school meals, it's really that sort of, it seems the education of you're eligible for all of these potentially, given that none of them they're sort of thrifty and below ultimately.
Yeah, we haven't done that exact calculation. If you are eligible for our program, though, you are what we call directly certified for school meals. Even if there wasn't universal school meals, you would be deemed income eligible and receive the free meals. So we work closely with our WIC partners, and Rosie may have met from Agency of Education in working together to kind of like, and with Reach Up and our other economic services division programs, so like we're all here. We're trying not to have too many doors that you have to walk through or too many people you have to talk to, but working together to educate about all the options that are available.
I was thinking, given it's an entitlement program, I mean, the projections, given our demographics here, that we're all going to get so much older potentially, I would think, is the federal government prepared to pay, twice as much in 20 years, or because there's so many more people both economically challenged and an older demographic?
I plan on getting older.
Better than the alternative.
Yeah.
In here.
Yeah.
Can I just ask about the farm to family program? You had a slide up earlier on that. So that's 100% federally funded as well?
Well, hardly anything is 100% federally, but we do have some state, it's a modest amount of state funds that we contribute to that program. I can follow with more detail.
Or just to bulk it up? Or
It's for the administration of the program.
okay. And eligibility is the equivalent?
185.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you could do that and you could do crop cash plus, crop cash and crop care.
That's right.
And is these coupons, or they use their same EBT card at the farm family,
You can do both.
both? Are the coupons in addition to their,
Yes.
their,
Yes.
when we participated in a farmer's market for a few years selling our sweet corn. And when someone came with a coupon, they need to make 2 trips to lug all the corn away from me.
Nice. Oh, I'm looking forward to corn season. That too. Yeah.
There's no corn until August.
I know.
You don't eat corn
I know.
until August.
Ways away.
He sells cow corn cheaper.
All right, well, I thank you both for coming in
Thank you.
and spending some time, and there aren't any other questions?
Thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the education. There is.
So,
The coupon.
committee, before we wrap up, I just wanted to go touch briefly again on the budget. So we'll get a letter in the works and start looking at the letter itself on Tuesday. I wanted to just go through the requests that we've had, that I think we've had, and make sure that it's a complete list. So the governor's budget proposal, thank you. The governor's budget includes base funding of $500,000 each for local purchasing incentive program and farm to school program. We had on Farm to School Day, I think we had some of the testimony specific to those and requesting that we support those 2 requests, which are in the governor's budget. And then there's also $200,000 in the governor's budget for farm to field days. And we've been asked to support that. So unless the committee feels that it wants to object for any reason or suggest a different dollar amount on either of those, and we haven't heard any requests to do that, but we'll mention that we support these programs. We would normally do that. And then there was the testimony we heard earlier for $850,000 in one-time funding for the database, et cetera, for the DEC to use for CAFO permitting and setting up that system. Then there is funding requests that are not in the governor's budget that we will want to consider. That includes the NOFA crop cash and farm share programs. I think that was 500,000 was the request. The food bank request for totaling 5 million over 3 different programs. The Natural Resources Conservation District / Council, they've requested 3 million, and there is some funding in the governor's budget. I believe it was 500,000. So they've asked for our support on the base, but in addition.
What was that 112 last year? Was that something that we added or was it waterfall?
It was the waterfall, I think. Yeah.
But was 500 and then.
Yeah. We heard the request for the Working Lands program that there's $1 million again in the governor's budget, and we've heard the request to add a couple, 200 or 2 million more to that. There's the funding for the farm emergency program. That's a $12 million.
20.
Thank you, $20 million request. There,
Does that have any of the governor's money? Is that in the budget at all or no?
No.
no,
And how is that a sort of base, a one-time, is it,
so the bill that is on our wall, 167, no, I'm sorry. Which one is it? We did the flowers there, 229, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
yeah, it is,
It's, okay,
Molly Burke.
okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's the parameters for how a funding request would be determined from year to year. And I think it's using a look back and averaging.
All right.
3-year thing.
Yeah,
But it needs 20 to get.
well, and I think the 20 million is not it's a number that was derived from going through that exercise, I think.
It's a flood omnibus bill coming in.
Different bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything along the line of this in that bill. I don't know, coming from the governor, but
Yeah, I think that doesn't, I think that's not
probably not.
including this funding.
I'd be more for downtown. Yeah, I just have, I haven't read through it at all yet. Yeah.
Did the fairs ask for anything?
Yeah, that was the 200,000, yeah, and that's in the budget, it's in the governor's budget, yeah. Then there's at least 3 other things that other committees are, I think, going to be recommending, and we can say, we also support this, that's helpful. One is the Housing Conservation Board money, the full funding for that.
What's that number?
That's 34.9, I think, million. That's the full statutory amount, I believe. Which goes both to conservation and housing programs, and we might have an interest in, both. We might want to make sure that, we say that both should be funded. The Land Access and Opportunity Board, I'm not sure that we actually got a letter from them. So I'm not certain about the dollar amount there. And then Serve, Learn, and Earn. This is an organization that has sent us a request. We haven't heard testimony, and maybe we should next week. They also have, I think, made a request to the Commerce Committee. They usually do. So our Commerce Liaison, if you want to check with that, actually, Greg.
To see if they've
Yeah.
made a request to them.
Why did we get looped in on that then?
There's a good reason for it, and
It's like the Youth Conservation Board. is-
yes, it's
Yeah.
4 different organizations, and I think they've offered to testify, so we'll see if we can find some time to hear from them. It was a very, I think, good program.
Yeah.
The other one that I'm not sure whether we had a formal request, but I think we heard about the restaurant meals program. So that's another one. Others, possibly.
The Small farmer diversification and transition grant, does that go into this? If we wanted to request potentially additional funding for that, since we saw that there was a remarkable amount of unmet need with over 171 applicants, the agency, and it had originally been requested at 500,000, it got cut down to 141,000. Just curious.
Yeah, I think that if we wanted to recommend that either some of the 1 million be dedicated to that, or if we wanted to recommend that in addition to the 1 million, that there'd be another amount that was.
1 million is a working lands grant.
This is under the working lands.
Or if they got their 3 million base, you could do a carve out for this. boosted up his working lands.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, so yes.
Mhm.
Sure. So I think that's the list. And I suspect that if I've left anyone or anything off, that we'll hear about it before I leave here at 4. Yeah, if not, that by Tuesday. So we will have conversation about this. Please think about it over the weekend. We'll set aside time on Tuesday and then hopefully have it all wrapped up by Wednesday.
So how does this work for Greg and I, first time tiptoeing through this realm? You weigh the different requests. We don't worry about the dollar amount so much. We worry about the validity of the program. And then we send that off to appropriations or ways and means or whatever, and they yay or nay.
Yeah, it's appropriations. Appropriations is working on the budget, the appropriations committee, the House Appropriations, and they will be getting a letter from every committee that's gone through similar process and heard from other people with an interest in having some money in the budget. And what they will probably do is come back and say, we only have, and we know that there's only a finite amount of money, and it's nowhere near enough to cover all of the different requests that will come in. So what we can do is, encourage them to take a good look at the requests that we've got. There isn't a dollar amount for the, for this committee or for the next committee. It's not done that way. And so that maybe is a good thing. We then at the end of the day at the real end of the day, they may come back and say, we can only help you with, some of these programs. Which ones do you, really recommend? So we'll want to be thinking about that too.
Right,
Ways and means won't play into it at all.
Ways and means won't necessarily, unless there's a revenue component to it. Yeah.
Who's the person in appropriations who does agriculture?
Representative Stevens.
Yeah.
What was VHCB's budget last year funding? What did they get funded at last year, do you know?
I don't know. I am not certain. And I have a number in my head, but I'm not sure if it was last year or 2 years ago. And it was a bigger number.
Would it be good to have those numbers for comparison purposes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And we'll see if we can have that for Tuesday.
Because I just wondered how that number is sort of arrived at. We're not so much involved in those negotiations.
Yeah, so I think
Big money.
that one number, the VHCB figure is taken, it's a statutorily derived formula from
They've
what.
underfunded, right? So they don't.
Right, and historically it's been underfunded, yeah. So, but I think it's encouraging, or it's, a good thing that at this point, the governor's budget has the full amount in
It
it.
does.
Yeah. Which hasn't always been the case.
We did have the LAOB in with Gene Hamilton.
Yes.
If you all remember.
Was there a budget?
They wanted to use the excise
They want
tax.
25% of the cannabis excise tax.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, good. Let's make a note of that.
Mhm.
We don't really control that.
No, yeah.
And I think that I'm not sure we have a liaison to the House General Committee, or if that's where it is, but I think they're also meeting with another committee on that. We'll check on that. Okay, anybody have any other thoughts? Not, we can wrap up. Thank you, everybody.